Peace negotiations is now looking more likely in this Russia and Ukraine conflict. For the past 2 years since this conflict started, Zelensky has maintained that the goal of the Ukrainian government was to reinstate the border integrity of Ukraine back to the state it was in 1991, which means their goal was to capture Crimea and send the Russian occupiers packing. This had been the narrative all along. Zelensky vowed to not settle for less. He vowed that Russia must pack and go. Now, bear in mind, during this time, when this war started over 2 years ago, Russia had only occupied about 5% of the Ukrainian territory land. Zelensky, over the years, labeled Russia as a terrorist state, and they did everything to get the backings of most European countries to recognize Russia as a terrorist state. Zelensky enjoyed the spotlight on the Frontline pages and in the news for nearly over 2 years. You all know what I'm talking about. He made a law. He signed off a law that prohibited any Ukrainian official, any Ukrainian government, including himself, to ever get involved in any form of negotiation with Russia while Putin was the president of the Russian Federation. Basically, Zelensky managed to tie his own hands behind his own back with that law. The narrative of the Ukrainian government, of Zelensky, throughout these 2 years, maybe over 2 years now, was that he would not settle for less unless Russia pack and go. He claimed he would not settle for less unless Crimea is recaptured back by Ukrainian. Zelensky, for the last 2 years, had maintained the narrative that Russia must not be anywhere within the territory of Ukraine. They have to pack and go. That had been basically the narrative from the Ukrainian side of things throughout the last 2 years. But however, last week, everything took a different turn. Last week, Zelensky had sat down and had a careful assessment, let's say reassessment of the whole situation, especially regarding the Western support of weapons and money and aid to Ukraine. He also took the time to evaluate the Russian response to how Russia had become angry with their assault on Ukraine, especially on the country's infrastructure. Zelensky took the time to evaluate their involvement in the terrorist attack that happened in Moscow, the failed one. Basically, that attack failed to produce the result Zelensky and his allies. I don't want to throw any names out here, but you know the people I'm talking about. They failed to achieve the result they were hoping for. Most importantly, with everything being said, Zelensky's term as the president of Ukraine ended yesterday, the 31st of March 2024. His term as the president of Ukraine ended yesterday. An election should have happened yesterday. But hey, and he has now signaled out of the blue. Zelensky had now partially raised the white flag and said Ukraine is now ready to give up territory in order to start negotiation. He said Ukraine is now ready to go back to the 2022 state where there was a deal. A deal was already there. We all know this. I saw it. I don't know if you saw that deal. It was online. Zelensky is now calling for the negotiating table to be reopened, for them to go back to the 2022 state where Russia presented a deal, but we know who went to Ukraine to discourage Zelensky from following up with that deal. Now, I'm going to say a few things. I'm going to mention a few points where I personally think Zelensky messed up. I'm going to give a few pointers where I think Zelensky basically fucked up. Now, these are my own opinion. I don't know what you think, but let me know in the comment section what you think about this point I'm about to make. So the first point, the first reason why I think Zelensky messed up big time was this. He believed all the lies and all the fake promises that was made to him by the European Union, NATO, and the United States. We're not going to go into the promises, but I think you all already know most of it. So, sorry, that is point number one. Point number two, Zelensky tied his own hand behind his back by signing off that law that no Ukrainian officials, including himself, will ever sit down to negotiate with Russia while Putin was the president. That was a big mistake. That is point number two. Point number three, before we got to this point where we are today, when the war first started, as of 2021, 2022, Russia only controlled 5% of Ukrainian land, which is Crimea. Russia only controlled 5% of Ukrainian territory, which was Crimea. But as of today, the 1st of April 2024, Russia is in control of 30% territory. Oh my God. Russia is now in control of 30% territory, landmark of Ukraine that belongs to Ukraine. Russia is now in control of 30%. Now, you do the math. It's very simple. 5%, there was a deal there, ready to go, but he turned it down. But now, 30% and growing, by the way, 30% and still growing, no deal available. And now my guy is now raising the white flag at this point when Russia had the upper hand. Good luck, Zelensky. Good luck, because you will need it. So that's point number three. Point number four, the terrorist incident that happened in Moscow just last month had now changed the dynamic of this conflict completely. And it has changed it forever. With the involvement of the Ukrainian government, which they have openly admitted, that had changed this entire dynamics of this conflict. And as much as I know, and I think some of you already know, Russia will never forgive. Russia will never forget. This has put a different dynamic to this conflict entirely. I'm not going to go into that, but I suppose some of you already know what I'm talking about. So that is point number four, where I think Zelensky messed up. Point number five, I think Zelensky messed up big time. I knew he was desperate. We all know they were desperate. But he messed up big time by attempting to start attacking Russian infrastructure. He made a big mistake by starting to attack Russian refineries. He made a big mistake by starting to attempt to attack Russian energy structure. I think out of all of this, that was the biggest mistake Zelensky made. Throughout these 2 years of this conflict, Russia had not concentrated in destroying Ukraine energy. Russia had not attacked Ukraine electricity. Russia had not concentrated in destroying the dams, the energy system, but now, because Ukraine started it, you all know what Russia has done to Ukraine right now. 85% of the country is without energy, is without light, is without gas. Russia had basically sent them back into the dark age where people are not having to cook with firewood. People are not having to do things. That is a topic for another day, but you understand what I mean. So that was point number 5, where Ukraine government, Zelensky, made a big, big mistake. And I think he now knows that was a mistake, but the mistake is done, the deal is done. So it is what it is. So number 6, this one is a big one, which I think is going to, I don't know how this is going to play out. Number 6 point is this: Zelensky is no longer officially the president of Ukraine. Now, you hear what I said? I said officially. He's no longer the president of Ukraine because his term as the president ended yesterday, the 31st of March 2024. So that will leave people wondering, where do we go from here? Who is now going to be in charge? But obviously, we know the authoritarian regime in Ukraine had now started. I'll come back to that in a minute. There's the point I need to make about that. We'll get to that. Now, the final point, what I think Ukraine government, Zelensky, messed up while he was the president of Ukraine is this. He had a deal there. And all they needed to do was give up Crimea. All they needed to do was go sign the deal, and we would not be here today. I would not be here doing this video. You would not be here wasting your time to watch me tell you this. The world would be a better place today if he had signed that deal. But guess what? He did not. He had a very good upper hand then, but he didn't take the opportunity. He didn't take the advantage. And now, Russia have the upper hand over everybody, over NATO, over EU, over Ukraine. And you already know, any negotiation that will happen is going to be in Russia's term, whether you like it or not. That is what is going to happen. So, this is where we are. Now, let me go to the point where I said about Zelensky now running an authoritarian regime in Ukraine. His term as the president officially ended yesterday, the 31st of March 2024, as we all know. Elections should have happened yesterday, the 31st of March 2024. But the election had been cancelled by Zelensky while he was still the official president. I suppose we all know why, but let's not say too much about that. But one thing though, I've got to give Zelensky a round of applause. I've got to give him credit because this guy everybody is calling a comedian, he becomes smart. He has become really smart. I'll tell you why I said that. He knew officially his term as the president finished yesterday, the 31st of March 2024. He knew. And he knew the power for him to make decision as the president, official president of the country, finished same day yesterday. But you know what he decided to do? I'll tell you what he did. He played smart by sacking every single minister, by sacking every single government official that he feels will become a threat to him. That's correct. He started this a while ago, and he sacked quite a few people, some top government military officials, which you all know, Zelensky, a lot of other ones. I don't know more all the names, but lately he sacked some really, really interesting government ministers. Even his own best friend, he sacked him yesterday. No, not yesterday. About 2 days ago, on the 27th, I think on the 26th of March, between the 26th and the 27th. I don't know exactly when. He sacked all of them with no reason. I suppose you're thinking what I'm thinking. People have asked him, what is the reason for sacking these people? Think about 3 or 4 people he sacked. There was no reason. They just got sacked. And he claimed it was reshuffling the government. Reshuffling the government that was going to end in a couple of days. I don't think so. I think the guy was reshuffling, putting his own people in places where he knows if there's anything coming, his own people could sort of, block anything coming off. This is the reason why I said the authoritarian regime had now started in Ukraine. And people and the military will soon start uprising. And I think it will be interesting to see how it plays out. The military and the people of Ukraine will soon start uprising against the government. Because I don't want to say too much yet. And I've also heard, it's been confirmed, this is a confirmed news, that most of the people that were literally bonded from the road, most of the people that were forcefully taken from their homes, from the street, most of the men that were forcefully sent to the training camp and mobilized, now being sent to the front line. I heard they are all surrendering in a large amount. In an unimaginable amount. They are all surrendering because they don't want to fight. They've made it very clear they don't want to fight. But they've been bonded from their house. They've been forcefully moved from their home. They've been forcefully taken away from the family, from their families, sent to the mobilizing center, and now forced to go to the front line. What would you expect? If I was a soldier, I would not want to fight side by side somebody that was forcefully mobilized because you obviously could tell what's going to happen. Now you're fighting 2 enemies because this person could turn against you and get rid of you because they don't want you to die. But anyway, luckily for them, they've been surrendering and they've begged the Russian government not to send them back to Ukraine. They are all begging the Russian government not to do any deal, any swap with them, with anybody, because there are 3 things that will happen to them. Either they are killed on arrival when they get to Ukraine, or they are in prison, or they'll be forced to go back to the front line where they don't want to go in the first place. Final point I'm going to make today without wasting your time too much. Zelensky had ordered the military personnel to start retreating. From what we know, from what I heard, from what has been confirmed, not just a speculation, this is a confirmed news. The Ukrainian military are retreating from all the front line. Not completely, but they're moving most of their forces back because Zelensky wants them to come back and defend the capital city, Kyiv. He wants them to come back and form a defensive line in Kharkiv. He wants them to come back and form a defensive line in Sumy region, because there are speculations that Russia is about to start another offensive. Russia had stationed about 120,000 soldiers around that region: Kharkiv, Sumy, and Kyiv. And even NATO, even the Ukrainian military, nobody knows when this offensive is going to start. But there are speculations all over the place that it will be sooner than they expect. So Zelensky is now calling back all the soldiers to retreat from the front line, come from defensive line in Kharkiv, Sumy, and the capital city, Kyiv. My question, well, anybody watching this right now, or anybody listening to all of this, would think, what is the end game plan of all of this? And why now? Why now? Why is now the time Zelensky have decided to signal that he is ready to negotiate with Russia? And the ultimate question here is this: does he, or do you think Russia now controlling 30% landmark of Ukraine territory? Do you think Russia is going to give back an inch of the 30%? Leave a comment, let me know what you think. Because there was a deal. They had a deal on the table. Russia only had 5%. Russia was only controlling 5% landmark of Ukraine, which was Crimea. But that wasn't good enough for Zelensky. He fell for the trap. He fell for the promises the EU and NATO made to him. And now look where we are. The country is being decimated. The country is being destroyed. And now his term as the president is finished. What do you think is going to happen? I don't really know much about the Ukrainian law, but I've done some reading, and I know his term as the president finished yesterday, the 31st of March, 2024. An election should have happened yesterday, but that has been cancelled indefinitely until further notice. So in other words, Ukraine is now in an authoritarian regime. What do you think? What do you guys think? Is there something maybe I don't know regarding the Ukrainian law that you know? Please leave a comment, let me know, because this is a learning platform. It's good for us to learn from each other. But yeah, that is the update for today, the 1st of April 2024. I'll catch you guys in my next video. Have a good one.